you can do it all, but that doesn't mean you have to try and live it. So it's this idea of if I had to and I really had to push, I could. But I also can't be doing that every day.
Welcome to Small Strides, Big Business, the podcast for insurance agents who want to grow their business in a way that feels smart, sustainable, and authentic. On this podcast, we have honest conversations about better sales interactions, client service, automation, mindset, marketing, referrals, practical things that move your business forward in real life. Whether you're brand new or years into the game, so grab a notebook and let's dive into today's conversation. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Strides, Big Business. I'm really excited. We have James Ahearn here today, and he is not my typical guest. He is not an insurance agent, which is going to be maybe a nice change for some of you who are watching this, but I'm really excited to chat with you today. So thanks, James. James is a lawyer and also the clinical director for Sonder Counseling. He's based out of Missouri, and he has been very successful in both managing the law firm and also as the clinical director with 27 clinicians. So you have grown quite a bit, which I'm excited to talk to you about. How did you go from lawyer to therapist, and where are you now?
Yeah, so it was quite the journey. Originally, when I was in undergrad, I wanted to go to med school, and that was my goal. And I think being so entrenched in the pre-med world, I never got a chance to really stop and ask myself, is that still what I wanted as it progressed? And then when I was living abroad, I made the decision that I was going to give up that dream of med school and decided to go to law school. So I went to law school, and while in law school, I was also getting my master's in Spanish, and that allowed me to do a lot of work within the realm of immigration. So the first firm I worked at was doing immigration along with criminal law, along with family law. And what I witnessed in my time there was that there is so much emotion that is laden into the experience with law. Often people are in their lowest moments. These are times where they're the most afraid. This is when they have the most uncertainty and doubt in their lives. And there are massive ramifications for what the outcome is going to be for them moving forward. And one of the things I noticed was that lawyers were not able to engage with the content that was kind of beneath the surface that was motivating a lot of decisions, and figured that if lawyers could be able to navigate some of the emotional content that could influence how the case goes. So I decided to, after I graduated from law school and completed the bar, I went to graduate school in counseling. And then after I got my degree in counseling, I practiced law while seeing patients, and then kind of did a lot more patients while doing some law. And then I went back to do a PhD in counseling, supervision, and education through the University of Missouri St. Louis. And through my time there, ended up leaving the law firm that I was at, went out on my own, created a law firm, and then ended up creating a counseling practice as well. And the counseling practice has really expanded over the last couple of years with very rapid growth that has been wonderful.
Wow. And such a holistic view that you give your clients, which is incredible. So, well, when we first started talking, I met you through Sonder Counseling. And so I'd love to chat a little bit about, since you've been through entrepreneurship twice, you've been through the bar and all of the other things that usually stress people out just by thinking about them, as far as growing a business, being the entrepreneur with the idea, all the way through the CEO and the board of directors, and then, probably the janitor as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the beginning, there was sort of a building the plane in the air kind of situation where I had rented the space in the office that I was in. It was just really me, and my paralegal at the time was also working as my office admin.
Yeah.
So she was kind of splitting the world with me of in the morning doing law stuff, in the afternoon handling counseling things. And then I started to bring on employees, and it was fairly small at first. I remember one of my patients kind of joked at me, was like, does anyone else work here? Because we had, 2 or 3 employees at the time. And then what I was really focused on is building a company and a culture that I would want to work at. And that kind of became the guidepost for me of what is the culture going to be? Because I'm a big believer that the founder of any industry haunts the halls. Even decades later, centuries later, they're still like, we do this because that's how we've done it from the beginning. And actually exercising that mentality of, I don't want to get stuck in that. Because as we grew, I recognized that certain systems didn't work the way I wanted them to, or didn't work anymore, and having to go back and revisit those and having to delegate and give up some of the certainty that comes with, I've got it, I'll do it, I'll tackle it, that you can't do it all,
Yeah.
and having to put trust in others. And, I remember I'd go on vacation and I would be checking text messages and checking emails and following up. And does anyone call this person back? And what's going on with this? And I was saying that, and just being so consumed with it because, like you're saying, you are all these roles. I'm doing payroll and I'm doing hiring and I'm doing insurance stuff and I'm doing every little bit of this, plus having to see my patients and having to, be present for them in those spaces. And that was a big challenge for me. The idea of having to entrust another to care for the company, maybe not as much as I do, but a little bit beyond the idea of this is a paycheck for me.
Right.
In time, I've had that. So now I have my office manager, Crystal, who is phenomenal and handles so many of the day to day behind the scenes things that she navigates. I have a clinical manager, Dana, who is wonderful. She, meets with the clinicians, she audits records, helps coordinate trainings. She's there as a resource. One of the struggles that I've had is having to impart, come to see myself as an entrepreneur and as a business owner,
Mhm.
which is more than just a manager. It's more than an employee. It's this different idea of having a great amount of freedom and a great amount of accountability at the same time.
So, one of my past guests said, and I love this, that there was a moment where he stopped working in his business and started working on his business. Obviously, you're still needing to work in your business. You are the lawyer and a clinician still, right? So there's that back and forth. But um, I know might be a hard question to answer, but what steps did you take when you were hiring these people? Did you have a mission statement that, you aligned with when you were doing the interview? I get a lot of people in the phase of wanting to hire some good people and just finding that hard, but it sounds like you've done it.
Well, what happened was a lot of the initial hires were people who I had known through either graduate school or who I'd worked with at other places.
Okay.
So they were either coming from an agency or they were coming from a hospital setting where they felt burnt out. They were giving up weekends, they're having to work holidays, and they had reached a point of being in this in between of I'm not ready to go out on my own yet because this feels unfamiliar and scary. And there's so much behind the scenes that I've not experienced. And also, I don't want to stay where I'm at. And in that, I brought them on and we kind of built from there. And it really wasn't until probably my maybe seventh or eighth hire was the first time it was someone that I just did not know,
Okay.
and they had sent their resume in to a LinkedIn post that we had. And in that, we started having a dialogue of their experience and, their kind of worldview, their expectations were in alignment with mine. And, she actually became one of our first clinical managers. And she actually is going out and has created her own practice since then. Because one of the things that we focus on here is that mentoring of if you're ready to go out on your own, I want you to be able to do that. We don't have non-disclosure agreements. We don't have, these covenants that restrict people from taking their clients because that's what I did. I was at another practice, and I took my clients and opened a law firm, and I was at another clinic and took my clients and, opened Sonder. So there was a sense of I'm not going to slam the door behind me once I've walked through it when the only way I had this opportunity was that very door.
Right.
So we have started to kind of shift as time has gone by with what is the caliber of clinician we are looking for, being more direct in the expectations, being more expressive around when those expectations come online. We've also kind of pivoted where we are looking at hiring younger clinicians. So we can be more involved in mentoring and training and give them these skills that they may not get at other places because mentoring is a relationship I highly value. Very big in training, very big in mentoring, very big in shadowing, giving people those opportunities to develop those clinical skills because they're valuable skills. And I feel like often we're kind of thrown into the world as clinicians without that structure that many of us need.
Yeah. You and I spoke. I was an occupational therapist for 20 years
Yeah.
before I joined this. And so I do think that the first setting I worked at, being a hospital with multiple other therapists, was so, so key. And that mentorship, you just don't get that in the classroom in the books.
And I think also, especially for your clinicians, and I think for young entrepreneurs as well, their imposter syndrome is so real.
Yeah.
Of like I can tell you there have been many times where I was like, oh my God, this is all going to implode. Like that, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Those moments that show up of like, okay, or everyone's going to quit, right? Because we're changing a policy and because we're, a small practice as a business, we're a small company, but as a practice, we're a larger practice. And having to navigate those realms of, okay, we're going to be shifting this policy now due to, changes in Missouri law, or this is an issue that's showing up with some more frequency. We need to put something in place to change the system. And trying to convey that as a realm of we are questioning if these systems are serving us or not.
Hmm.
And that trial and error and trying to offer transparency of there is decision making involved in this. This is not a one day I woke up and decided we're going to do something entirely different. Is data driven. It is something that's informed. We have these conversations. And I think that's kind of what the hard part is of with being a small company is that um, you are very much boss and I'm also very much James.
Hmm.
And sometimes navigating those dual relationships that show up can be somewhat tricky when, clinicians have requests that they're making around, some financial need. And it's like, well, I can understand and appreciate the stress and I know it's there. Also, at the same time, we have overhead we have to meet. And our budget may not be such that we can really afford that right now.
Yeah.
And having to navigate that from this level of the balancing act and the recognition that balance does not always mean constant equilibrium. It can be a shift over time.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're looking back, 27 employees is a good size. So you've
Mhm.
definitely shifted and made some changes. Just looking back over the last 6 or so years, if there was somebody who was starting out where you were and wanted to get to where you are, what things would you recommend putting in place? Everything from tech to assistance to what kinds of things have you done that maybe even you wish you did earlier?
So one of the things that I find really valuable is because of my role as a lawyer, I do a lot of consulting work with other counseling practices in the area. So I get secondhand wisdom
Mm.
from paths I don't have to walk. So I get them and they call and they're like, oh my God, someone accidentally did this and this happened, or we have someone calling this, that, and the other, and we don't have a policy in place to handle that. So there's a lot of like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like we do need that. And being able to build off of that and, create policies and have that in place. The other thing that I recognize is to go back to the beginning, the wisdom I would have offered myself and probably still would have ignored, but would have offered anyway is grow slow.
Ah,
Right? We had a lot of people coming in and we, were in a good place with that. And then trying to kind of create these systems and places that are happening. And then, we had expanded 4 times we had expanded. So originally we started, we had 4 offices in the suite. They took a wall down, added 2 more, took down another wall, added 4 more. And then we expanded to another floor. So, and then we did another expansion because we took our break room that was not really used much and turned it into 2 more offices. So there was this situation of kind of bringing people on and hiring people and let's go. And we have these people that are interested. But then credentialing takes time
mm,
to get through the insurance panels.
right.
And then to build a caseload takes time.
Yeah.
And then, where do you have that interest and what the availability is? And so there was a sense of where for me, the first couple of people that I hired were coming in with fairly full caseloads. So there was like, okay, the clients are here, we have that, we're good. And then all of a sudden it became this idea of when you hire 4 people in 3 months, you're not going to be getting 200 new clients in to bring all those people up to where they need to be. So there was that sense of being mindful that every business has its own seasons.
So, two things I grabbed from that: surrounding yourself by people who have done it so you can learn. I think that that's
Hmm.
huge in the mentorship piece of it as well. But I know that a lot of entrepreneurs feel alone out there, right? So, it's hard to sometimes attach yourself to somebody, especially if you're not working for them. But that's really important. And then having a realistic idea of the time that things take. I found that myself like, oh, this is going to all work in 2 months. I'm going to be up and running. And
Hmm.
here we are, a year and a half later, and it's finally getting going.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too, which is like buy-in, I feel is really important from, kind of all different sides of this. As we started to build, one of the things that I noticed is that, especially with clinicians, there was a hard time seeing counseling as a business.
Mhm.
It is extremely personal. It is very emotional. It is relationship based. And that is a big part of this where, the modal number of sessions people have is one. So you're looking and saying, okay, how do I, you know, make this something that clients see the use in it? And it becomes a balancing act, of how do you also hold your own value to it? One of the things that is out there is, for example, a lot of companies have cancellation policies that if you fail to notify someone, so my thought process was we will waive the first one for the client and the clinician will still get paid because it's an opportunity for us to reset the expectation of, hey, if you're not here, here's the cost, this, that, and the other.
Mhm.
We're letting you know now. And I've had some discussions with other practices where they feel like we are losing profit then. And my mentality is that people are more likely to say, I feel like you're money hungry and you're only in it for this. I'm going to go elsewhere.
Mhm.
Right. Rather than I appreciate you letting me know, I'll be certain moving forward to let you know ahead of time. Or we get text messages where they just say flat out, hey, I know I'm going to be canceled. I have to cancel. I know I'm going to be charged. That's totally fine. I'll see you next week. And I'd much rather have a client stay with you for, 6 months to a year to beyond than, I made the cancellation fee once, but then rapport was broken and no chance to remedy it.
I think that transparency is huge in any business. Yeah. So when you're looking at your growth, can you pinpoint maybe one or two of your biggest operational bottlenecks that you've kind of moved through scaling to the growth that you've had?
Part of it was timelines. When we brought on more people, we thought the renovations would be done faster than we thought. So we had this situation where people were like, I don't have a room to be in. And then it was like okay, I'll meet with my patient. And at the time, the law firm was in a different part of the building. So I'd be like, okay, I'll have them meet with me in my law firm today. And you can take my office that's upstairs. Or someone would be like, okay, I can move to remote and I'll take like the admin's office and I'll do a virtual session. So
Okay.
that was this kind of situation where it's like, okay, we have too many bodies and not enough space. And then you move to the other place now where we're looking and saying, okay, we have sometimes too much space, not enough bodies. So now it's like, okay, how do we then build this up to help people market themselves and help people get their names out there that they can offer these services? And I think that is something where within this field, we aren't really trained to think about marketing. And when I kind of started, I filled up my caseload pretty quickly. And part of the reason was that I was the only therapist a lot of attorneys knew. So when they had their client going through a case or, kiddo needed some support, they'd be like, hey, can they work with you? And I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Where it's a sense of you're not marketing yourself as this professional, you're marketing yourself as you that has these services that could show up. And I think that's what really helps people be successful within the realm of counseling is people are known for who they are and that they're also a therapist. So when someone's looking for support, it's like, "Oh, yeah, I know someone who's a therapist, like, they may be a good fit for you," and it's here you go, you build that bridge.
Yeah, mentorship and referrals. Awesome. So I want to navigate a little bit as a business owner, since we are, I think a lot of our people watching are in the insurance space. Share with
Mhm.
me a little bit about the trials and tribulations, or maybe the joy that you've had in finding insurance and bringing that into your business or
Yes.
businesses.
Yeah, so on both ends, it's been tricky. One is we engage with insurance as providers, so we go through we know we're in network with, I think, 9 or 10 different insurance companies, so we navigate with those, which right now within the realm of counseling, there's a lot of debate between going private pay
Mhm.
and leaving the insurance networks versus staying in. I look and say that insurance is a resource for many clients because they wouldn't have the means to pay for insurance out of pocket at the rate that most clinicians charge,
Mhm.
and also developing a group practice that is private pay based only is a challenge because people prefer using their benefits, and I've witnessed some of our own clients here have gone and changed their insurance so that they could keep their therapist who was in network, so that became part of that reality. On the flip side, as a business owner that wants to be able to provide insurance benefits to clinicians, it becomes complicated in the realm of how do we balance out what these various needs are of the idea of, okay, like when we've sent out surveys before to say kind of what's most important to you all. Is it having a high deductible? I'm fine with that, but I want to have broad coverage in the realm of, medication, or, I need something that is far more affordable for me, or I need something that is just, in case I get hit by a car, I have some form of insurance,
Yeah.
and trying to navigate those various needs of what meets the needs of employees. And then also from the employer side, what's financially reasonable or doable,
Right.
because there's a sense of, we see fluctuations. The thing about therapy is like now, it's a holiday week. A lot of people are going to be traveling, and since it's Thanksgiving, it goes either way,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to be out of town, but I have some people that are like, hey, can we do a virtual session on Friday? Because I'm seeing my family on Thursday and like, I don't know how I'm going to be. And it's like, okay. And then we have other people that are like, yeah, I'm good. It's the holiday. I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
So it becomes this thing of, okay, this is a valuable benefit to offer, but then it's how do I cater it where there's flexibility in which, we can be sure to provide that. And at the same time, it's not cost prohibitive.
Yeah, a lot of variables. So, are you, as you're bringing people in, obviously, I'm guessing, because I work with a couple other therapy groups that people get paid per visit, I'm guessing, right?
Correct.
So their paychecks may be fluctuating. Having 27 people puts you under the threshold of having to offer from the ACA compliance. But are you able to provide specific benefits for your employees?
Yeah. So we right now are doing a case by case what people need. So we have a policy that's in play that doesn't really offer the best coverage, but it's like here you have something, and it's an individual policy that they own, and then we subsidize a portion of it. And then we have some clinicians that say, hey, listen, I have particular medical needs that would not be covered by this to the extent they need to. And then what we work with them is we say, okay, find a policy that works for you, and then we'll subsidize that as well for a particular portion. But then there's also the expectation that you will be seeing a higher caseload and being more consistent with that, because that's kind of the exchange that we have in place.
Okay. At what point, like what threshold were you when you decided now it's time to start providing things? Was it 2 employees? Was it 5 employees?
Yeah, I think the first time that we got out there was the first time I hired, so probably my fifth employee was the first time I hired someone who had dependents that needed health insurance. And that was the situation of, okay, a lot of other people were like, yeah, I'm still under my parents' plan, or, I have my spouse and I'm under their plan. But then when, we had people that said, I would really like to come to work here, and we found that they'd be adding a lot of value to the space. It became this city of we need to offer this to be competitive, and that need became real. And we started to try and get some ideas from other insurance brokers and trying to navigate how do we provide this, that, and the other. And it just kind of got to a place where it was like we need to just pause for a moment, because this is deserving of a deep dive
Yeah.
and a lot more of a commitment than these kind of passing conversations of here's a 20-minute phone call. Okay, we'll circle back and get back to this. It
Yeah.
required more of a data driven and, tangible numbers decision over this sounds good. We should do it.
So it kind of, the situation made itself known when it was
Mhm.
time. You kind of knew. That's good to know. All right. Well, just finishing this up, coming into the holiday season, we talked about this before we hit record. It is busy. It is stressful. You're running 2 businesses now. So, I would love to tap into the clinician part of you and give us some suggestions as stressed out entrepreneurs or business owners. What are some things to look for, some things to do, what's important for our mental health, all of that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think we need to look at is when we look at self care, we often look at self soothing. We don't look at self restoration. And self restoration is often the harder part. Self restoration is I need to make sure I'm going to bed on time, right? I need to put down the phone and step back after a certain time where I'm not engaging. I need to hold the boundaries and expectations that I put in place, even if they're uncomfortable. And I think one of the things that you have to have this kind of belief as an entrepreneur that like you can do it all, but that doesn't mean you have to try and live it. Right. So it's this idea of if I had to and I really had to push, I could. But I also can't be doing that every day. Right. And I think when we have this, we're in a season now where we naturally begin to slow, right? As it starts to get colder, it starts to get dark out, we tend to get tired earlier. We have this idea of wanting to kind of nestle in and have our cozy season. And we've also at the same time designed a world that doesn't always afford that. So it becomes being more intentional, right? There's kind of this social understanding right now that we're not always going to be available because the holidays are happening. And, this is one of those weeks. Thanksgiving is Thursday, it's one day. People all kind of started Tuesday. I'm out the afternoon. I'm going to be off on Wednesday. So there's a sense of give yourself permission to partake in that opportunity as well. That as everyone else is kind of stepping back, I can step back too, right? The work is infinite, it's always going to be there, right? But our time's finite. So at times we do the work, and at times we prioritize ourselves. And for each of us, it's going to be an act of self understanding to determine what serves you when and how.
I love that. I'm going to take some of that advice. Those questions will be there on Monday. Wonderful. Well, James, I know that you're in Missouri, but you do treat patients outside of your state, correct?
Correct. So we have clinicians that have licenses in multiple different states. I myself am licensed in New Hampshire, as well as Georgia, as well as Colorado. So those are other places that I work as well.
Wonderful. Is that because you wanted to come visit New Hampshire?
Yes. No, I had a patient move there, and he was like, "Can I continue to see you?" And I was like, "Let me see what I can do." And at the time of COVID, New Hampshire had expanded their telehealth allowances. So I think I filled out the application at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and 6 o'clock that night, they were like, "Welcome, here's your license number." And I was like, "Well, that was fast."
Free
Then,
or die, we're out here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then we also have the counseling compact coming into effect. So 43 states will all share privileges with one another. So that also is expanding the
Okay.
counseling realm for a broader scope of practice.
Wonderful. And how can people get a hold of you? I know you're on the social media platform.
Yeah.
You've got a website. Share that
Yeah.
for us.
So it's sonder-counseling.com. We're on Twitter at Sonder Counseling. We're also on Facebook. We have a group of that. We're also on Instagram at Sonder Counseling.
Awesome.
So these are all options, and we love to participate in social media. And we have a Spotify playlists that we put out once a month on different themes of music, and we have different interviews. So yeah, a lot of different things to engage with.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate, again, this holiday busy weekend, and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for spending time with me today on Small Strides, Big Business. I hope this conversation gave you some clarity, confidence, or one new idea to move your agency forward. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow or subscribe and share it with another agent who could benefit. I'm Crystal Small, and remember, every small stride you take today builds the foundation for long-term confidence, stability, and growth in your business.